Good morning, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here. Today, November 12th, 2021, a continuation of the talk yesterday that was cut off by Facebook or whomever. Fighting totalitarianism. Welcome on this journey today. I hope you're well. Just a simple extemporaneous sharing on an epic topic. Even the word fight conjures up intensity, anxiety, conviction, conscience, dignity, courage. The American yesterday, the former senior editor, publisher of the magazine out of Myanmar, about Myanmar, Danny Fenster, 11 years in insane prison in Yangon for lies and falsehoods by the terrorist dictator Ming Online and his MASAC, his terrorist organization, MAHSAC. You know, it's so front and center today for all of us. I feel also for myself, the issue of dictatorship, totalitarianism, coercion, all forms of tyranny. The term medical tyranny and medical apartheid now is ubiquitous worldwide. I want to make it very clear, I am not anti-medicine, anti-science, anti-vaccination. I am super, uber, hyper pro-freedom, autonomy, independent thinking, critical analysis, critical thought, all the basic independent qualities of consciousness that we, aspire to as human beings in democratic societies and even in totalitarian governments. The freedom to think for yourself, to experiment, experimental verification as vocation, whether it be spiritual, religious, dhammically, medically, experimental verification on the terms of your own integrity. And yeah, many people, many billions of people are living in a constant state of anxiety based upon the extraordinary attempt by government overreach, government leaders, medical personnel, some of them, the corporate elite, CEOs. I listened to a talk by the CEO of Pfizer the other day. It is beyond appalling to listen to this animal speak about reality. It sounds, frankly, like a really toxic mafia, whatever you want to call them, tyrant. And the arrogance, the certainty, all the qualities that you reject whenever you feel them, if you're halfway conscious, much less being sensitive to the beauty of human life. So this topic of the fighting totalitarianism, I wish I had more time to just really lay deeply into the framework and the blueprints that I have over many years of my study. 4 books that I produced recently with my colleague and co-author Fergus Harlow called Burma's Voices of Freedom. 36 different interviews with men and women who spent between 5 and 21 years essentially tortured behind bars for their radical conviction in freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of heart, coexistence, unification, harmony, and the nonviolent confrontation to tyranny, to violence, in their country, to ethnic cleansing, to genocide, to crimes against women and men and daughters and mothers and grandparents, human life. I mean, you want to go like, what in the hell are you thinking? And just shake these almost human beings, these types of predatory animals. Where did you inherit this DNA to think and behave and speak like this, and so-called rise to the corporate elite and government leaders that you are? The Chancellor of Austria coming out and saying that it's likely that there'll be a lockdown of the aberrant unvaccinated. I mean, you're going to be ending up staying at home because of your love of freedom and of questioning and of looking carefully at the various adverse effects, if not death, of so many people around the world. We don't even know the amount of them, except it's been so underreported, completely manipulated statistics, and yet we've seen the videos, we've watched television programs, we've watched the underground documentaries, we see all the various alternative news. Occasionally it breaks the surface of the corporate misinformation sources like BBC and CNN and blah, blah, blah. And we know, all of us have friends that are suffering at this very point from blood clots and all kinds of other bizarre, strange physical effects based upon this chemical, this stuff that is being injected into your body. And I hate needles. I'm not anti-science, anti-medicine, anti-vaccination. I just don't like putting bad drugs in my body under any circumstance, much less through a needle. This is not a vaccine. This is some kind of weird gene therapy, concocted by a Frankensteinian consciousness, whether it be groups of individuals or the collective, who knows what. But there is something really off about planet Earth right now. Yes, maybe we will win the battle, we'll fight back, there'll be a new Earth. But right now, it's a call to psychic arms globally in every country of the world to fight this, the mild term is government overreach. But when you shoot rubber bullets at people and tyrannize them with gases and jail terms and all kinds of other coercive methods that we're seeing in Australia and in Melbourne and all around the world, and the criminalization of free-thinking, independent, intellectual citizens of democratic countries because they want more evidence of the efficacy of this drug, this thing, this spike protein, call it what you want. It doesn't seem to do well for the human biology. And you really wonder right now, and I dare use the word, the cluster, F-U-C-K, that's going on, the criminalization of consciousness based upon the criminalization of freedom. Really, the criminalization of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the criminalization of all beings are born equal in dignity and conscience, and inevitably all beings are intrinsically born and should be respected for their right to choose their own destiny. Yes, with some responsibility. So, the obvious parallel, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with vaccinations or non-vaccinations, but the real issue here for me is government overreach / dictatorship / totalitarianism, call it what you want, aka Democracy Incorporated, gone bad, a toxic version of it in America right now with the lies in the Biden regime. What an idiot president. And yes, I say it directly to his face here digitally. I would be happy to go to the White House and drop some psilocybin in his mouth voluntarily based upon he and his doctor wife and everyone else in the government. Maybe they need a wake-up call to snap out of the coma of this type of unthinkable, perverse level of toxic arrogance and tyranny. Don't you understand the meaning of apartheid? Demand in a country built upon freedom and independent thought? What are you thinking, dude? and thinking of governments around the world. No, 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 no. You can never do anything again. You can't go to a subway. You can't go to a soccer match. You can't go to theaters. You can't go see U2. You can't go anywhere to a restaurant. You can't even get a pizza takeout sitting on the sidewalk unless you roll up your sleeve and take this drug that may very well, because your neighbor has lost her ability to speak, neurological issues. Look at the governor of California right now. Where is he? Adverse effect. There's so many things that have gone down to develop a degree of conscious hesitancy. Yes, yes, yes. But are we in the formation of the Fourth Reich? I see what happened in my country of Burma in the short period of time. I was there leading a retreat with the monks there back in 2021. And yes, it was just the beginning of the pandemic. And there were 12 years of movement within a civilian government to challenge 70 years of successions of dictators based upon 32 years of white supremacist genocide by the United Kingdom, a country that's been tyrannized and traumatized with World War II. And all of a sudden, we have a civilian government led by this remarkable woman and lots of men and women, and they're imprisoned overnight based upon a military coup. That's really kind of like, what? And the world basically did nothing except collude, like a lot of the people did in Europe and Germany, to collude, to be in toxic compliance with the formation of an ideology of eugenics-based totalitarianism that led to the conscious extermination of many people called deplorables. And are we in that? Let's not even wait to see. Let's not let history repeat itself. The early signs are here. And I think it's a call to arms. I'm not saying bullets. I'm saying a call to conscience and solidarity, to the decency of democracy, and to make good on the promise of what conscience and human life means, with a degree of empathy and compassion for the unborn. Some battles are worth fighting. This is one. Now, I remember back in the day when my mom and dad actually bought me cigarettes. They believed that they were actually something hip and cool. I was 17, okay? Who knew at the time? Those beautiful men and women smoking cigarettes, the happy life, the good life. There was a kind of thrill in that toxic nicotine that came in, but it was nothing like marijuana. But somehow I got addicted. Jump time. Look at the propaganda that went down to convince the world population on the virtues of smoking that which would kill you. Not all across the board, but pretty much the adverse effects of smoking tobacco led to what? Tracheectomies, to speak through your throat, through an artificial hole carved into your neck. What an adverse effect that might be. And these things called black golf ball sized tumors that grow in your lungs. What is that called? Lung cancer. And then this chronic coughs that come from people who are kind of like precancerous. And all the various other things that have been seen through the inhalation of this torture freedom that it was called by the early profiteers trying to sell this lethal substance to the women of America. And we've all known, we've all seen now, if you go to a kind of almost any drugstore, it's been mandated by law to put these graphic images on cigarette packs. It's a wonder that they even still sell the damn things. But the selling of the narrative that this lethal substance is something that we should manufacture and communicate to the citizens of the world, and do what we can to keep the profits going by getting younger and younger kids involved worldwide in smoking that which will kill you, harm you, and secondhand smoke is not very nice. Both of my aunts died of emphysema. They died. They stopped smoking at the age of 40. They both died at the age of 72. I can't even imagine with the amount of adverse effects to this so-called vaccine and the demand for boosters. I'm not going to get into names and people. I know so many people right now that are really suffering. We all do. And boosters perpetuity, that's like saying you smoke cigarettes all the time, dude, until you graduate from college. We want to guarantee that you're immune from cancer by smoking. That is a clusterfuck. That is propaganda. That is not only misinformation, that's a conscious manipulation to tyrannize and to create a type of genocide through the cigarette. And it's really sickening to see even the selling of pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, I believed in the early days because of whatever I felt. I believed the narrative, the cultural, the psychiatric narrative, that somehow I was depressed. Really, quite frankly, I was just out of place being thrown out of Burma by a dictatorship as a monk and eventually forced to disrobe. I came back to America, a culture that, quite frankly, I loathed. It wasn't the people, it was the system of lies and competition and predator politics and capitalism. And my only survival was through the kind of the strange conditioning of adaptation through substance use and eventually substance abuse, to the point I was really kind of joyfully killing myself through subsequent and overlapping addictions, alcohol, nicotine, pharmaceutical drugs, and eventually into antidepressants given to me by a psychiatrist. And it took me 8 years to overcome getting off of those fucking antidepressants. It was the hardest thing in the world when I began to see the detrimental effect to others and to me because of that so-called euphemism. This is not antidepressant. This is depressing, inducing pharmaceutical lies. You read of how the selling of antidepressants to Japan, for example, it may have even been Pfizer that sold antidepressants to Japan, a culture that was really, very deeply rooted in understanding the wisdom that life can be difficult. There's a degree of Buddhism in Burma and in Japan that really believes in the virtue of sadness and struggle. But they marginalized those emotions and created a fear about them. And they sold antidepressants to Japan over the coming decades. A culture now where there's mass suicides. Who knows what's going down? But the point here is the selling of toxic substances. And clearly, I just don't understand how this is happening, why it's happening. And really the call to arms right now is how well can we stand up to this onslaught of tyranny? And it's not just a pharmaceutical issue. Okay, just wanted to get that off my chest. Set aside the selling of war, a whole other, the industry of mass murder, the spreading of democracy and freedom under Bush. Look at the blight on the American conscience simply of Iraq, and play tennis and masturbate in their country clubs to their own toxic denial, this obsession to demonize others for the profit of yourself. And it's really, it's not even aberrant. It's demonic. And we're seeing the rise of this in a relatively kind of okay world. There's blights all over the world, but all of a sudden, totalitarianism now is rooting and surfacing in America, in Europe, in Australia, in Canada. And we're going like, my God. And are we going to be the ones, as Bobby Kennedy said at the end of his talk the other day, will you be the one who protects and hides the beloved Anne Frank? Or would you be the one who turns her in? Just today I read that the Singaporean government will stop paying the medical bills of those who've been diagnosed with COVID and must go to the hospital, whether it be just simply short-term or emergency and long-term, if you're unvaccinated by choice, you'll no longer have those bills covered. Talk about coercion and tyranny and creating a divided world, a divided civilization, not to mention the increase in anxiety. I mean, I don't know how the boys and girls are doing it. I don't know how the men and women are doing it. But boy, is there ever a call right now, not only to maintain one's own spiritual, emotional, psychological, existential health and resilience, but to couple that resilience with courage to care about things larger than one's own self-health, and to join the global struggle, the global fight. The war is on against totalitarianism wherever we see it, in our own homes, in our towns, in our stores. This is the time, again, it's not an original thought, to make civil disobedience, Dharma disobedience, spiritual disobedience, political disobedience, civil disobedience, a way of life. Everywhere we go and look and speak and sing and walk and dance and meditate. I know in Burma alone, the civil disobedience, the activism, the war, the revolution is symbolized by 3 fingers in the high sky of freedom. There must be an insignia, a decal, a tattoo, a wink, a nod, a smile, a sonnet, a song, a hymn, a phrase, a poem, some type of symbol, some type of magic, some type of recognition. Wherever we are not alone, because we wink, we nod, we do what we do to align the psychic, physical, symbolic solidarity worldwide. We are the masses, and we refuse to participate in the lie, in the tyranny. And guess what? We include you and your family too, because freedom includes you. We don't want to vilify you the way that you're vilifying us. We don't want to tyrannize you the way you're tyrannizing us. You're the stupid one. We're not. Why are we not stupid? Because we love freedom more than we love tyranny. And that's a very black and white situation. And right now, there is no room to stand or sit idle in your downward facing dog or whatever yoga asana you do on your quiet mat in your closet of your own soul, praying to your own Patanjali, may this pass. Prayers are workable, but prayers in dynamic revolutionary action that's unique and creative to each of us. I don't know what the formula is. The monks in Burma, those who really care about the revolution and the people and democracy and freedom, refuse to take food. They turn their bowls over, because the boys and girls who are renunciates in Burma that live in the Sangha as bhikkhus and bhikkhunis live based upon walking through villages. And those men and women who want to voluntarily give them food on alms round will come out and put food in their bowls to eat for the day. And the nuns and the monks will share that food among each other. But those who refuse to participate in the complicity to those who support tyranny, they turn their bowls over. They refuse to walk through those villages. They refuse to go by those homes of the cronies and those who support big business and corporations and tyranny and terrorism in Burma. It's a small deed that has a big ripple. Every one of us have a chance today to create and innovate in the smallest ways. Bumper stickers, symbols of human behavior, smiles, t-shirts, ball caps, whatever we can do, and t-shirts, and whatever we can do with insignias, whatever we can do with texts, videos. Flood the world with opposition to tyranny. Flood the world with the spectacle and the beauty of freedom. How do you convince a tyrant to become naked and dance to the music of their own denied psychedelic liberation? I mean, isn't that the equation of good music, good sex, good drugs, bad drugs? Roll up your sleeve. I want to put this needle in your arm. Well, here, let me give you a good drug. Open your mouth and let me put this on your tongue. It's just a microdot. You'll stop wanting to put the jab in someone else. You'll stop wanting to put the jab in others. And you may put it in yourself, but basically what you're saying is, I want to honor the dignity of another person. That's all. I want to honor the sovereignty of another person. I want to honor, informed. I'm learning the word, consent. I want you to determine what's right for you. How do you communicate? How do you teach critical thinking? How do you inspire the radiance of an independent soul that's respectful of the conditions of interrelatedness? How do you bring radiance to these 30 articles of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights? How do you get someone off the sidelines who's pretending to be a star player or a coach and actually play the game of love? How do you get someone to throw up their hands and take off their shirt and take off their shoes and drop their pretense for a day and delight in the magic of human existence that coexists with others that may differ from your music? How to love diversity and unification of differences over tyranny and apartheid? How do we melt the division of delusion between each other so that democracy really breathes in a harmony of what looks to be disparate pieces, but because there's honor and conscience and dignity and the love of freedom that's not on our own terms, we go, diversity and dialogue is preferable than coercion and domination. Aren't these timeless philosophical, spiritual questions what led us down the adventure of yoga and meditation and the exploration of the psychedelic with these transformational, timeless dimensions of existence? Isn't that the role of quantum physics, string theory? I'm reading Michio Kaku's book. I have to read each paragraph 5 times. It's so beyond me to understand the most simple, basic teachings of this eloquent genius, extolling the virtues in the most simple language of what it means to be embedded in the physics of totality, and to try to understand space and symmetry, curvatures of space, distances, light waves, particles. I mean, these words point to something poetic, but he's explaining them on a very deep scientific level. Why do I bring this up? We live in magic. We live in a miracle. And violence is anathema to the magic that I aspire to deliver to the unborn. And right now, the fight on totalitarianism isn't just to conquer evil, for me, evil outside and denied evil inside. But it's also equally the elevation of the radiance of your own unique expression of freedom. Because one of the things that I really rail against in myself at times is conformity, expectations. We've all lived in the boxes of other people's needs and fears, and we're unraveling from those types of strange forms of puzzle confinement. It's as if each piece you put into the puzzle confines you further. And we're deconditioning ourselves from playing in the puzzle of life by fitting in the pieces of conformity, if you follow me. We're unpuzzling from conformity. We're creating new pictures of reality, the puzzles that have been created by capitalism, by religion, by false authority. Those puzzles conform They contrive, they tyrannize, they get you to be obedient to a false narrative called confinement of beauty, confinement of uniqueness, confinement of your freedom. You can never control the wind by boxing it. And so we're in this incredible existential, social, cultural, political dance right now. And for some, it's a bad party, it's bad music, we want to leave. But where do you go when all of a sudden the Chancellor of Austria is saying to the world, according to the BBC, that if you're not vaxxed, very soon you will be confined to your house. You'll have to get food delivered to you. Your theater, your home, your gym, your yoga studio, your monastery, you're going to be in Anne Frank. And who knows what's coming next after that? Windows being crashed and broken, doors being broken down, food poisoned, water supplies cut off, credit cards renounced. The tyranny, when will it stop? Will it stop with the rise of the Fourth Reich? Will it stop with the reformation of gas chambers and Zyklon? Where will it stop? A nuclear bomb that explodes the earth? Where will it stop? Where will it stop? Where will tyranny stop? That's like asking, when will extinction be over? When will the climate collapse truly be collapsed? When will this medical tyranny finally end? Only when we stop and push back against this anthropocentric driven extinction that we're in, when we push back enough at our collusion and our complicity with leaders and our own behaviors with climate collapse, when we push back and elevate freedom over this medical government endorsed tyranny. I wish it was true that this experimental drug was truly a vaccine and it actually worked. But it's clear that it doesn't protect you from either getting COVID or transmitting COVID. It even seems to compromise your immunity. And it doesn't have anything to do with any respect for early intervention and D3 and zinc and health and the elevation of all the therapeutics needed in nature, in light, in organic substances, and even in pharmaceutical substances to treat this thing wisely. Government overreach, had it been there all along? Had a Hitler been embedded in Germany all along? What happened in Germany during World War II and prior to World War II wasn't something that happened in Germany. It's a state of consciousness that's embedded in consciousness worldwide. We're just seeing it arise right now in our own countries and often in our own homes and sometimes even in your own mind. None of us are ultimately immune to these states of consciousness. And so the fight of totalitarianism isn't just at them, it's equally at us and them to understand what are these textures of consciousness and to champion and understand, become more literate with the meaning of freedom in your life. My dear friend, U Win Tain, 80 years old, I've known him for decades. He was the man instrumental with U Win to facilitate my 6 months of underground conversations with the Nobel Peace Laureate Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, who spent nearly 17 years in detention, now is incarcerated in an unknown location somewhere in Burma, minutes away from what's being floated as life sentence for crimes that she did not commit and for persecution of behaviors that are so admirable against corporate media's vilification of her, stood firm in the power of conscious dialogue, even with her enemies, gave life to reconciliation when it was almost impossible. Look at the outcome of 12 years of a desire for conscious reconciliation with the tyrant. And it's landing her in prison. And the world, corporate media, created a narrative to vilify this remarkable woman and the democracy movement in Burma. And so it's about the radiance of freedom, where each of us in our light can illuminate a higher brightness of our love of democracy and freedom of choice. Let me close here. It's something about conformity and obedience. I was taught as a monk to live in a very rarefied form of spiritual disobedience. And I saw those nuns and monks who tried to manipulate their way through the system to conform to ideologies, to try to manipulate their friends, colleagues, and teachers into believing their false narrative so that they could live in the lie as a poser and become an influencer without the insight. So I say this, spiritual disobedience to me is such a, and it's a work in progress, I feel, in myself, how to play in the field of timeless truth without losing your individuality and your vulnerability, your ethics, your humility, your self-corrective qualities of consciousness, self-admonishment, and a love of freedom over your need for power, privilege, and profit, if you can follow that. Spiritual disobedience is another way to really fight totalitarianism. It's to become a bright, shining example of independent critical analysis, self-inquiry, deep questioning. Aung San Suu Kyi told me back in the day when we did our book together that our revolution is born from the ability of individuals to fight tyranny through consciousness and conscience, and the courage to empower dignity and conscience to question tyranny, authority, dictatorship, fascism, and totalitarianism. The ability to question in the face of a challenge or violence takes courage, she said. But our war is one of the voice and one of consciousness, not of the fist, not of the gun, not of anger. But it's a war of conscience. And to me, that's where I want to stand in my Dharma, in my yoga, in my life, in my politics, is to fight totalitarianism, is to empower the virtues of spiritual disobedience, which isn't a negation of beauty, but it's a willingness not to toxify states of consciousness or to compromise dignity for the greater good. So spiritual disobedience, what is that? It comes to mind spontaneously the Buddha's famous discourse, or at least attributed to him, called the Kalama Sutta. When a group of men and women in a village in India, it was said, had so many men and women who were teachers come through talking about the Dharma, about spirituality and philosophy, but at the end of the month, there were so many different opinions that it left the village of the Kalamas confused about who to believe. And so they invited this young man named Gautama, he was the Buddha at this point apparently, to resolve the puzzle of of confusion. We don't want to just obey that which is the most prominent flavor of the Dharma this month, and the wind is blowing that flag in that direction. And this new influencer has got the voice on Instagram, only to have the wind blow in the other direction, and that particular influencer change the flag and the meaning. Who to believe? And it said that the Buddha came, and of course this is paraphrased, and I think each of us can relate based upon our own understanding. He said not to believe anyone. Dr. Anthony Fauci, we don't believe you. Faux President Biden, we don't believe you. We don't believe you. It's not that we don't like you. Some don't like you. We don't believe you. And the Buddha is saying, don't believe me. Imagine sociopathic Fauci and Biden saying, don't believe me. Just he somehow got turned on to the sutta by the Buddha. And he's saying, I read a sutta by the Buddha called the Kalama Sutta. I'm changing my position in government. There's no longer a mandate. I'm going to go in the opposite direction, which means don't believe me, don't believe science, don't believe the medical authorities, don't believe the CEO of Buhler of Pfizer, don't believe Dr. Anthony Fauci, certainly don't believe orange hair bad Donald Trump, don't believe Nancy sold out Pelosi, don't believe anything in Congress, don't believe the Senate, don't believe any of my colleagues in the EU, don't believe the sociopathic authoritarian premier of Victoria in Australia, don't believe the Prime Minister of Australia, don't believe the impotent, sexually deprived, toxic dictator of China, Xi Jinping, little prick Ping. Don't believe any of these people. Don't believe them. Just take a big breather. I want you to do the research for yourself, the Buddha was saying. Hello, a simple teaching. Don't believe. Do the research for yourself. Dig, 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 he told the village of the Kalamas. Dig, dig, dig. Don't trust Wikipedia alone. Don't trust the BBC and CNN. Don't trust the mouthpieces of our misinformation propaganda scheme. Dig, dig, dig. We're going to tell Twitter and anti-Facebookian and the oligarchs in Wall Street and Silicon Valley to stop canceling and to reform all the people they've canceled. Even orange hair bad Donald Trump is back on Twitter and is back on Facebook and is back on Instagram. Everyone who's been canceled is back because we have a birth of a fight against totalitarianism by the very totalitarians who are committing this kind of medical apartheid tyranny that looks to be like fascism in action. And so there's a pause. We're going to give it a go. And this could be like sort of comedy satire in the making. It's going to be a part of my upcoming film. And we just took a pause, and they're saying, don't believe. And I want you to do the research for yourself. We've been hearing critical thinking, self-analysis, discernment. We're tired of censoring people. We want to empower democracy worldwide. We want to turn back everyone's fear on tyranny. We're going to take it off the jab. We're going to take it off Big Pharma. We're going to just give all the people out there who are hesitant a breather. And we're going to also just support democracy worldwide in this simple gesture for a month. Bear with me. And I want you to do the research, Planet Earth, to find out what the truth is of no longer hiding and manipulating the deaths of COVID. We're no longer going to manipulate and hide the catastrophic effects, the adverse effects, the mild effects. No, we're going to completely support, like tulips around the world, truth. The tulips of truth around the world. It's going to be a big kind of pause in the onslaught of this control demon that's coming down. We're going to take a pause. Okay. And I want to give you a little bit more information before you go out about your research to determine the efficacy of your understanding of democracy, of human rights, of freedom, of critical race theory. No longer teaching that in the schools. School moms, we hear you. We're going to pull back all of these radical leftist, communist, socialistic things, and I'm going to even put back up the wall on the border between Mexico and the United States right now, and to stop these hundreds of thousands of cartel-driven, so-called migrants coming across the border from these tragic lives. And we're going to stop giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to the migrants who've lost children based upon cartel manipulations and murder and rape. I'm going to stop all of my toxic behaviors. I'm going to even remember my name. I'm President Joseph Castro, Fidel Castro, Biden, Adolf Biden. I forget my name, but that doesn't matter. But I want you to empower your research, your critical thinking, your tulips of truth, and find out what really matters to you about COVID, about the so-called pseudo-vaccination. I want to just give you every bit of research on all the background on the big pharma. I want you to see all the lawsuits that were settled in the millions and billions of dollars for criminal behaviors with Pfizer and Moderna. I want you to see the truth. The tulips of truth are going to flower worldwide for the coming winter. And be very careful of cognitive bias. Be very watchful because it appeals to your intuition, the Buddha said. Don't believe it just simply because it appeals to your own sense of reasoning and instinct and intuition. That's pretty radical. And I know it's coming from very cherished books. Even Robert Kennedy's best-selling book that will soon probably be banned on Amazon, The Truth of Anthony Fauci. I've got my copy coming in the mail. Don't even believe Mr. Kennedy. Check his footnotes, check his references, check the abstracts, cross-reference everything. This is called spiritual disobedience in the Kalama Sutta. Spiritual disobedience. I want to empower spiritual disobedience, Dharma disobedience, political disobedience, social disobedience, civil disobedience, cognitive disobedience. I want to empower the new religion called spiritual disobedience globally for the winter, for the tulips of truth to flower. We want to get to the bottom of this pandemic. We want to restore democracy, and we want tulips of truth to flower a new form of democracy in Burma, in America, in Europe. We want to be a better world as a result of this aberration of medical tyranny based on misinformation coming out of big pharma and government, myself included, Mr. Biden, talking about you, talking about yourself. We want a restoration of unity, harmony, and peace on earth. Thank you very much. Why doesn't the Pope say something like this, huh? Why doesn't the Dalai Lama say something so obvious as this? Why doesn't the president just go right there without a teleprompter and tell the world exactly, do a transcription of this talk and say, Mr. Clements put it into my mouth on my teleprompter. It wasn't really me, but I'm saying it because I know it's true. I want to create a meme, the tulips of truth for the winter. of 2021-2022. Worldwide, the restoration of a higher radiance of democracy. And the Buddha concluded this Kalama Sutta. Only believe that which is true based upon your repeated, careful, mindfully intelligent analysis of your thought, speech, and action. He didn't stop there, according to the sutta. When you see it is for your benefit and for the benefit of others, cultivate it carefully over time and be mindful if you see that it's no longer beneficial, cease it. I know you've gotten the vaccine, you got the first shot, you got the second shot, but you don't want the booster because you've seen your best friend go down, and you see that Eric Clapton can't play Stairway and all the great hits of his life. You begin to see, no, I want to look more carefully into the Kalama Sutta and apply it as spiritual disobedience. And I want to be honored in American society and European society for one who plants the tulips of truth. So all I'm saying is, let's rise to the occasion, people, right? Fight totalitarianism with the tulips of truth this winter by taking a simple sutta of the Buddha. Do a search, the Kalama Sutta. Empower it worldwide as the radiance of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Mr. Fauci, please read it. Mr. Biden, please read it. Xi Jinping of China, please read it. Restore democracy to Hong Kong. Restore democracy to Burma. Restore freedom to the world. Give us hope, right? Everyone empower hope through the action of bringing spiritual disobedience into our lives and fight totalitarianism at the core of our own consciousness and conscience. And in that conscience, the radiance called the tulips of truth, flowering by oxygen and by light and by minerals given to us by critical thinking. Not a thought, it's intimacy of conscience. Intelligence of conscience is critical thinking. Independent thinking is an intimate intelligence. It's not this. The God Equation by Michio Kaku, Einstein spending 10 years every day of his life thinking deeply in these deep equations of the cosmos in physics. I'm reading about the life of Newton and all these other great minds and how they dedicated their time over years being so immersed in their own critical spiritual disobedience that they don't even sleep or eat. And in the middle of a conversation, Newton was said to have gotten up and just written on a piece of paper, a napkin, or even on the wall. So deep was spiritual disobedience, taking the Kalama Sutta, documenting the evidence of deeper research. Think for yourself, feel deeply into thought, speech, and action. What is true for you? What heals, and overcome that which divides. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being in my life. God willing, see you tomorrow here from Hawaii at 9:30. Have a beautiful day. And keep the good fight against totalitarianism, the tulips of truth in the winter of 21 and 22. A new democracy, a new form of freedom, a new earth. Thank you.